Tammy Slaton, star of the popular reality show 1,000-Pound Sisters, was recently arrested by police. The complainant is none other than her own sister Amy's husband. He claimed in court that Tammy embezzled his wife Amy's money and filed a formal complaint about it. But Amy had no idea about the whole incident. When she suddenly found out that her beloved sister had been taken away by the police, she was completely devastated. Amy reacted violently with tears in her eyes and burst into anger at her husband. He curses her in foul language and tells her bluntly, "Get out of my sight." Since this incident, new tension and unrest have spread between Tammy and Amy's family. Fans are also worried, where will the tension between these two sisters end? Tammy Slaton never thought her life would spiral into chaos like this. Just weeks ago, she had been celebrating small victories, walking unassisted, laughing with Amy in the backyard, planning a joint YouTube comeback to reconnect with their fan base. It felt like they were finally healing not just physically but emotionally. But everything changed one rainy Tuesday morning. Tammy had just finished her usual breakfast when the loud knock at the door startled her. Before she could reach the handle, officers burst into her home with a warrant in hand. She was handcuffed and let out of the house in full view of neighbors and news cameras. Her crime? Alleged embezzlement of funds. Amy's funds. The complainant? Michael, Amy's estranged husband. Apparently, Michael had gone to court with documents claiming Tammy had somehow transferred thousands of dollars from a joint family account to cover personal medical expenses and luxury items, money that allegedly belonged solely to Amy. According to Michael, he had proof, screenshots, statements, and a history of suspicious transactions that painted Tammy as a manipulative thief. Amy, meanwhile, was blindsided. She was out grocery shopping with her kids when she got a phone call from a mutual friend. They took Tammy. Amy thought it was a joke until she saw the flashing news alert on her phone. Her heart dropped. She raced home, eyes filled with panic, only to find her driveway empty, Tammy's slippers still at the doorstep. Confused and furious, she stormed into the living room where Michael sat with a smug look on his face. "You knew about this?" she demanded. Michael didn't deny it. "I filed the complaint," he said coolly. "She's been draining your money, Amy. I did this to protect you." Amy exploded. "Protect me? You think dragging my sister in cuffs is protection? You destroyed everything." Her voice cracked. "You should have talked to me. I don't care what she did. She's still my sister." Michael tried to reason, but Amy wasn't having it. The betrayal cut deep. "Get out of my sight," she spat, tears streaming down her face. "You're dead to me." Michael moved out that night. The house fell into eerie silence. Meanwhile, Tammy sat alone in a holding cell, devastated. She insisted she was innocent, that any transactions she made were with Amy's knowledge. She claimed Michael had manipulated both their accounts and was using her as a scapegoat in the middle of a bitter marital fallout. Fans were divided. Some blamed Tammy. Others pointed fingers at Michael. Amy, now caught in the middle, refused interviews. She even skipped filming sessions for the show. Privately, Amy visited Tammy in jail. The meeting was awkward at first. Tammy, dressed in the orange uniform, looked broken. "I didn't do this, Amy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He's trying to split us." Amy sat down, holding back tears. "I don't know what to believe anymore." Tammy reached out, grabbing her hand. "Believe in me. We've been through hell, but I've never betrayed you." He did. After a long pause, Amy nodded. "Then we fight. Together." Amy launched a counter-lawsuit against Michael, accusing him of fraud and defamation. With the help of a lawyer and digital forensics, she began to unravel a web of deception that shocked even her. Fake accounts, unauthorized transfers, and messages that hinted Michael had been planning this for months. Tammy was eventually released on bail, and the charges were placed under investigation. But the damage was already done. The show suspended filming. Their family was split. Trust had been shattered. Still, for the first time in years, Tammy and Amy stood united, not as reality stars, but as sisters trying to rebuild what had been broken. As they walked out of the courthouse hand in hand, Amy whispered, "No matter what they say, I've got your back." However, it was a crisp October afternoon in Dixon, Kentucky, and the leaves crunched under Amy Slaton's boots as she stepped out of her minivan. The air smelled of cinnamon, hay, and pumpkin spice, and that could only mean one thing. Halloween was just around the corner. Tammy sat in her wheelchair beside her, wearing oversized sunglasses and sipping a Diet Coke through a bendy straw. "Girl, I'm only here for the candy," she mumbled with a smirk. Amy rolled her eyes. "We ain't even started shopping yet, and you talking about candy? First, we need costumes." The sisters were going to Halloween Superstore, the biggest Halloween store within 50 miles. It had everything from creepy clowns to inflatable dragons, and even a section for plus-size costumes, which is what they were looking for. When they walked into the store, Tammy's eyes lit up at the decorations. Giant animatronic zombies danced near the entrance, and a fog machine puffed mist over plastic tombstones. "Okay, this place is lit," Tammy said. "Let's find me something spooky but cute." Amy already had a vision. "I want to be a glittery witch," she said. "Like sparkly, sassy, and totally Halloween Barbie vibes." Tammy burst out laughing. "You? A Barbie witch? You better be ready to cast some calorie-burning spells then." Amy chuckled. "And you? What do you want to be? A haunted vending machine?" They wandered through the aisles, tossing around silly costume ideas. Tammy picked up a werewolf mask and jokingly tried to scare a little boy nearby, who responded by roaring back and sending Tammy into a wheezing laugh. Finally, after a full hour of trying on options and posing in front of mirrors, they found their perfect fits. Amy chose a black and purple glittering witch costume, complete with a hat that lit up at the tip. Tammy? She surprised everyone by picking a massive inflatable pumpkin outfit. "I'm going full Halloween mood this year," she declared. "And I want the spotlight." Back at home, the sisters filmed a funny TikTok together. Amy danced with her wand, casting fake spells like "turn salad into cheesecake," while Tammy wobbled back and forth in her pumpkin suit, shouting, "I'm rollin' for my life." Later that night, their brother Chris dropped by with Halloween decorations and a box of candy eyeballs. Together, they transformed the front yard into a spooky graveyard, complete with fake skeletons, a fog machine, and a motion sensor ghost that made Tammy scream every single time it went off, even though she was the one who set it up. For the first time in months, the house was full of laughter, jokes, and pumpkin spice donuts. Tammy even let Amy paint her face like a jack-o'-lantern while watching horror movies. As the night grew darker, Amy looked over at her sister and said, "You know, I don't care what anyone says. This is the best Halloween we've had in years." Tammy nodded, licking some orange frosting off her finger. "Yeah. It's the treats, not the tricks, and the fact we're still together. That's what matters." And under the twinkling lights of their Halloween decorations, surrounded by laughter, candy, and the scent of fall, the Slaton sisters reminded everyone that family, no matter how spooky, is everything. However, it was a warm spring afternoon in Dixon, Kentucky, and the Slaton sisters, Amy and Tammy, were feeling nostalgic. After years of ups and downs, challenges, surgeries, tears, and laughter, the two sisters decided to take a little trip down memory lane. They sat on their front porch, each holding a tall glass of iced sweet tea, the sun casting a golden glow across their lawn. A gentle breeze rustled the trees, and Amy glanced over at her sister with a smile. "Remember when we tried to do yoga for the first time?" Amy chuckled. Tammy laughed so hard that she almost snorted. "Girl, we both fell over before the teacher even said breathe in. And you farted so loud it scared the neighbor's dog." Amy laughed and smacked her knee. That poor teacher looked like she was about to die. The Slaton sisters went to a local yoga class when they were first trying to reduce weight. They strolled in with confidence, wearing matching neon pink gym clothes, but things went wrong very quickly. Every pose developed into a fight with gravity, and toward the end, everyone in the class was laughing. They were tired, but it was one of the funniest, most liberated things they had ever done. Tammy wiped the tears of laughter from her eyes when she got back on the porch. "But you know what?" she replied in a softer voice. "One of my favorite times was when you found out you were having Gage." Amy's eyes lit up. "I was so scared, Tammy." But you were there. You told me I was stronger than I thought. I needed that. Amy was a mess of emotions when she found out she was pregnant. Doctors had informed her that things would be hard following the surgery, but there he was, small and growing. Tammy, who was still dealing with her own mental issues, stepped up and became the strong, supporting older sister Amy needed. That was the moment when their relationship changed. They weren't only going through hard times together, they were getting stronger. Tammy got quiet as she thought of a different kind of moment. When I finally got out of rehab, I saw you all waiting for me. I thought, maybe I am worth saving. Amy reached out and squeezed her hand. You are. And that day, that was one of the proudest days of my life. It took Tammy months of hard labor, mental power, and determination. Amy, Chris, and their family welcomed her with tears, applause, and open arms when she eventually left treatment. She had lost a lot of weight and gained a new perspective. Amy laughed. Oh, and don't forget about our spa day after all that way in trouble. You were wearing that cucumber mask. Tammy rolled her eyes. You look like Shrek with those green clay patches. Girl, we both looked like swamp monsters. They had treated themselves to a spa day after meeting their milestone goals. They got massages, facials, and mani-pedis, although the pedicure chair did break under Tammy, prompting a scene neither would ever forget. But for the first time in a long time, they felt pampered, proud, and relaxed. As the sun began to set, Amy turned to her sister. We've been through hell, Tammy. But you know what? Tammy tilted her head. We're still standing, and we've made some amazing memories. Tammy nodded, her eyes glistening. We're not just survivors. We're sisters, and we're gonna keep making more moments. They raised their glasses and clinked them together to the next best moment. And just like that, two girls from Kentucky, who the world once doubted, sat proudly in the golden light, not as just the 1,000-pound sisters, but as warriors, friends, and the beating heart of a story still unfolding. However, it was a humid Kentucky afternoon, and the Slaton family's backyard was filled with the sweet scent of grilled ribs and the sound of cicadas buzzing. Amy had organized a small family barbecue, just her, Michael, baby Gage, Tammy, and Chris. But when Jerry, Tammy's boyfriend, showed up uninvited, the air shifted. Chris narrowed his eyes the moment Jerry walked through the gate, toting a greasy bag of fast food and a half-drunk soda. Tammy's face lit up as she waved at him, ignoring the rest of the family's tension. Jerry plopped down next to Tammy with a smug grin, not even offering a hello to anyone else. Chris had tried to be polite for months, but today, he'd had enough. You really bringing fast food to a barbecue? Chris asked, folding his arms, his voice low but firm. Jerry smirked. I brought it for Tammy. She was craving it. Amy shot Chris a look, silently begging him to stay calm, but his jaw was already tightening. Funny, Chris said, stepping forward. I thought Tammy was working on her meal plan. Dr. Smith said. Dr. Smith ain't her boyfriend. Jerry interrupted. I am. That was it. Chris dropped his plate on the table and walked straight up to Jerry. Yeah? Then act like it. You think loving someone means enabling them to destroy themselves. Tammy's smile faded. Chris, stop. No, Tammy, Chris said, turning to her gently but firmly. You asked us to help you, and we're trying. But every time you make progress, this man shows up with a milkshake and a bucket of excuses. Jerry stood up, trying to puff his chest. You don't get to tell me how to care for my woman. Chris didn't flinch. I care about her enough to tell her the truth, even when she don't want to hear it. Tammy looked torn, her eyes bouncing between them. Y'all don't understand, she said, her voice cracking. Jerry makes me feel wanted. Chris softened. You are wanted, sis. You are loved. But love don't always look like comfort food and sweet talk. Sometimes it looks like tough love, like boundaries, like saying no. Amy stepped in then, placing a hand on Tammy's shoulder. You deserve someone who pushes you forward, not someone who holds you back. Jerry looked around, realizing no one was on his side. He scoffed, grabbed his bag, and walked out muttering, Y'all are crazy. Silence fell over the yard. Tammy looked down, tears in her eyes. "I'm tired of fighting." Chris sat next to her and handed her a napkin. "Then stop fighting us. Let us help." Tammy nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll try." And for the first time in a long time, Chris saw something different in her eyes. Not defeat, but determination. Maybe, just maybe, this was the turning point they all needed. However, it was a warm evening in Kentucky, the kind that painted the sky with shades of lavender and honey. Tammy Slaton, dressed in a floral top and a hint of makeup that Amy helped her put on, waited nervously on the patio of a cozy riverside restaurant. Tonight wasn't just any dinner. It was her and her boyfriend Caleb's first real date since their relationship had begun to grow beyond the hospital walls where they first met. Caleb, charming and kind-hearted with a soft smile and eyes that truly saw her, arrived right on time. He brought her a small bouquet of wildflowers. Nothing extravagant, but personal and sweet. Tammy's heart fluttered. This was the kind of affection she had longed for, gentle, steady, and real. They sat down at a corner table overlooking the river. The waitress brought their drinks, iced tea for Tammy, lemonade for Caleb. Their conversation was light at first, full of laughter and teasing. They talked about silly things, reality TV, their favorite comfort foods, and old memories. But as the appetizers arrived, Tammy felt a tightness growing in her chest. Her smile faltered. Caleb noticed. "You okay, babe?" Tammy swallowed hard. She looked at him, really looked at him, and decided she couldn't let this moment pass without being honest. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice softer than usual. Caleb leaned forward, setting his glass down. "Anything. I'm here." Tammy took a deep breath. "I've never told anyone outside my family this before, but I'm pansexual." Caleb blinked, surprised but not shaken. "Okay. Thank you for telling me. What does that mean for you?" Tammy relaxed just a little at his calm reaction. "It means I'm attracted to people, not based on their gender, but who they are. I've dated guys before, and I've had feelings for women too. Even non-binary people. It's just the soul, you know? The connection." Caleb sat quietly for a moment, absorbing her words. Then he reached across the table and gently took her hand. "Tammy," he said warmly, "you're brave for sharing that. And I'm grateful you trusted me enough to be honest. It doesn't change how I feel about you." Tears welled up in Tammy's eyes. "You mean that?" "I do," Caleb nodded. "You're the most real, unapologetic, and funny person I've ever met. I like you, all of you." Tammy chuckled through her tears. "Even the loud mouth and sass?" "Especially the sass," he grinned. Just then, the waitress brought their entrees, but the food could wait. In that moment, the emotional weight Tammy had carried for years felt a little lighter. She wasn't just accepted, she was seen and loved, without conditions. Later that night, as they walked along the river under string lights and fireflies, Tammy felt like she was finally stepping into a life that was fully hers, open, honest, and beautifully complicated. But the light poured through the windows in Tammy Slaton's room on a warm Kentucky morning. She sat on the side of her bed and glanced at social media, watching videos of people dancing, stretching, and completing workouts that seemed more like circus acts than fitness routines. Tammy held up her phone and said, "Look at this, Amy." Amy, who was in the kitchen making a protein smoothie for both of them, stuck her head in. "Girl, if you show me another cat doing yoga, I swear." Tammy chuckled and said, "No, this woman is doing aerial yoga. She's hanging upside down from the ceiling with some silk thing." Amy squinted. "Are you trying to do that?" Tammy shrugged and said, "Why not? I'm tired of the same treadmill and water weights. I want to try something crazy." Amy dropped the spoon she was using to stir the peanut butter. "Tammy, you know we're not quite ready for Cirque du Soleil." Tammy smirked and said, "That's exactly why we should try it." Amy booked a private session at a local fitness studio in town 2 days later, after a lot of begging and a few raised eyebrows. The business was operated by a flexible and courageous woman named Rosa, who had worked with various body types and was known for being unshockable. Rosa welcomed the sisters with open arms when they walked in. You must be Tammy and Amy. I've heard of you too. This is going to be fun. Tammy's expression seemed doubtful. Are you sure this silk can hold me? I'm still big, you know. Rosa winked and said, We've made the rig stronger. You're safe. Trust the process. Amy said in a low voice, This could be history or a trip to the hospital. Tammy stood under the long purple silk that hung from the ceiling. Rosa helped her tie the cloth around her waist and thighs, and then helped her settle down so that she was approximately a foot off the ground. Tammy moaned, This feels like a giant diaper. And Amy laughed so hard, she almost dropped her smoothie. Okay, now lean back slowly, Rosa said. Let the silk hold you up. Tammy took a breath and leaned. The silk softly held her body, and for the first time in a long time, she felt weightless. Her eyes got big. Oh my God, I'm flying. Amy clapped and said, You go, girl. Look at you float like a marshmallow in hot chocolate. They swung, stretched, and laughed like kids do at recess for the next hour. Tammy tried the inverted butterfly stance, in which she hung upside down with her legs spread in the silk and her arms stretched out. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't nice. But it had a lot of power. She was doing something that no one, not even she, thought she could do. Amy couldn't help but record parts of the session and put them online. The video showing Tammy hanging upside down and screaming, I'm a damn pendulum, went viral within hours. People were amazed and impressed. There were a lot of comments. Tammy is living her biggest aerial fantasy right now. I'm crying. I have no excuses if she can do this. This made my whole year. Tammy smiled as she read them, sipping water and still aching from class. I think I found my thing, she whispered gently. Girl, you just started a revolution, Amy said. Tammy promised to perform aerial yoga once a week. It wasn't always easy. She fell out of the silk more than once, and even kicked Rosa in the head on purpose once while spinning. But she was determined. She felt muscles she hadn't felt in years. Her posture got better, and her confidence went through the roof. And most crucially, for the first time in her life, Tammy began to think she wasn't just getting by. She was flying high. But it was a hot July afternoon in Dixon, Kentucky. The cicadas buzzed in the humid air like static electricity, and the tension inside the Slaton family house was even worse. The cameras were rolling, but the mood wasn't for show. This was real. Raw. Long overdue. Tammy Slaton sat in her favorite chair with her arms crossed and her eyes on the TV. Amy was pacing back and forth in the kitchen, and her baby Gage was walking around with a juice bottle. The air was thick with unsaid comments, and Chris decided he was done being careful. He walked in with a purpose, sweat on his forehead, and a damp flannel shirt from the heat. He seemed serious, too serious, not like his normal humorous, easygoing self. Tammy, he said forcefully as he walked straight up to her. We need to talk. Now. Tammy raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. Chris took a deep breath. I've been quiet for too long. We've all been trying to help you, me, Amy, Misty, and even strangers online who want you to win. But you keep pushing us away like we're the enemy. Tammy rolled her eyes and said, Here we go again. No. You listen, sis. His voice broke a little. I almost lost you last year. I saw you get rushed to the hospital. I held Mama's hand when we thought we were going to bury another one of us. And now you act like that never happened. Amy stood frozen, her eyes wide. For months, she had attempted to talk to Tammy about her attitude, her habits, and her inability to change. But Chris? He was the only one who could sometimes get through to her. Tammy moved around in her seat. You all think I don't know what I've been through? Do you think I'm dumb or something? Chris relaxed for a moment. No, Tam. I think you're scared. But just because you're scared doesn't mean you can treat the people who love you like trash. Tammy's eyes filled with tears, but she immediately brushed them away. Chris went on, I don't want to lose you, but I can't keep doing this if you won't fight for yourself. You push us away every time we try to help, and you say no every time we talk about rehab. You act like it doesn't matter every time you gain the weight back. Amy said softly, It does matter, Tammy. We want Gage to know his aunt. That really hit home. Tammy glanced at her hands. The room was quiet for a long time. Even the cicadas outside appeared to stop making noise. Chris knelt next to her recliner and took her hand. "We won't give up on you, but you have to stop giving up on yourself." Tammy's tears finally fell. Her voice broke as she said, "I don't know how to fix it." Chris squeezed her hand and added, "You start by saying that. That's step one." Tammy didn't protest, deflect, or yell this time. She just nodded. Amy walked over and hugged both of them. Gage waddled over too and said Tam with a smile. That day didn't solve all of the problems, but it was a start. Sometimes the hardest part isn't changing your body. It's letting people who won't stop loving you in, even when you attempt to push them away. And love always finds a way in the Slaton family. But it was finally spring in Dixon, Kentucky. The sun was warmer, the birds sang louder, and even the breeze smelled like new life. But for Amy Slaton, the change of seasons brought more than just flowers. It made her want to clean up her life, both inside and out. Amy stood in her dirty living room, hands on her hips, looking at the disaster that had taken over her once cozy home. She had been dealing with personal stress, emotional baggage, and the demands of being a mom to her two boys, Gage and Glenn, for months. "I've had enough," she said to herself, her eyes shining with determination. "It's time to clean up." Amy started in the kitchen with 3 trash bags, a vacuum cleaner, and a playlist of early 2000s pop hits. She threw away old canned goods, organized her spices alphabetically, mostly, and scrubbed every inch of the counter. Glenn, the toddler with endless energy, tried to help by dragging a mop across the floor and laughing as it got stuck in the curtains. Gage, who was older and more curious, asked 100 questions. "Why are you throwing that away, Mommy? What's this strange pan? Can I keep this spoon as a toy?" Amy answered each inquiry with a smile and a laugh. The camera crew silently followed along, recording Amy's changes, not just in the house, but also in herself. The next thing was Amy's legendary hall closet, which the family called the Closet of Doom. Tammy had previously dared her to open it on live stream, but the avalanche of old clothing, neglected Christmas decorations, and a bizarre singing teddy bear quickly put an end to that plan. Amy was now standing in front of it like it was a boss fight in a video game. She pulled the door wide and whispered, "Here goes nothing." She came out half an hour later, smiling and covered in dust. She found old photos, a high school notebook, and even a crumpled birthday card from Tammy that said, "To the best baby sis who always makes me laugh, don't ever change." Amy dropped down on the floor, moved by the memories. It reminded her of how far they had gone, from always fighting to moments of intense sisterhood. The front door creaked open just as Amy was going through a box of DVDs. Tammy, who now uses a walker and is more independent than ever, walked in with her usual sass. She looked around at the mess and remarked, "What the hell is going on in here? It looks like a tornado hit Hobby Lobby." Amy laughed out loud. "It's spring cleaning, sis. Do you want to help?" Tammy rolled her eyes but grinned. "I'll be in charge. That's what big sisters do." The next 2 hours were full of teasing, memories, and surprisingly good teamwork. Tammy helped Amy decide what to keep, what to throw away, and what to give away. They even found a box of VHS tapes with old family videos. For a while, both sisters sat on the couch and watched a much younger version of themselves dance in their backyard. The house seemed brighter, cleaner, and calmer as the sun went down. But the biggest difference was in Amy. "I needed this," she said to Tammy as they sat on the porch drinking sweet tea. "Not just for the house, but for me." Tammy agreed. Sometimes getting rid of the old stuff makes room for something better. Amy smiled, and her eyes filled with tears. "You mean like healing?" "Yes, and maybe a new couch. That one smells like diapers," Tammy said with a chuckle. They both laughed, knowing that their quest was far from over. But for now, in this quiet, tidy part of Kentucky, everything felt just right. But it was a clear Saturday afternoon in Long Island, and Teresa Caputo wanted to do something different. She didn't have much time to cook, which was one of her favorite things to do, because her schedule was full of readings and spiritual events. So, when her daughter Victoria signed her up for a cozy Italian cooking class at a local culinary studio in Huntington, she was happy to take a break. The studio was warm and full of life. People in aprons were already chopping garlic, kneading pasta dough, and sipping red wine while laughing at how badly they were trying to shape ravioli. Teresa was ready to start the class. She stood at her station with a grin, wearing her usual leopard print apron and well-styled hair. She listened closely to the chef's instructions on how to make gnocchi at home. But just as she was about to grab the flour, she stopped dead in her tracks. Her body got a little tense. There was a change in the air. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered for a time, but Teresa knew that feeling too well. A spirit had come into the room. She took a long breath and looked around the studio. No one else appeared to notice. The chef kept showing how to spread out the dough, but Teresa's eyes were fixed on a spot in the corner of the room near the rear wall.
A guy.
In his late 50s, putting on a flannel shirt. She could see him clearly, even though she knew he wasn't really there. He wasn't just passing through. He was there for a reason. Teresa put down her rolling pin and said, "You have to be kidding me. Not during the gnocchi." But the spirit wasn't going anywhere. "Teresa, how's your dough looking?" the chef asked. Teresa smiled pleasantly and said, it's fine. I just need a second." She left her station and walked over to a young woman across the room. The woman had flour on her hands and seemed astonished when Teresa walked up. Teresa whispered softly, "I know this sounds a little crazy, but I'm a medium and there's a spirit here for you. He's been trying to get your attention." The woman stopped.
"What?"
"He showed me a flannel shirt. He died suddenly from a heart problem. He was very stubborn and didn't like going to the doctor. He says you've been blaming yourself for not making him go, but he wants you to stop feeling guilty." The woman's eyes filled with tears right away. "That's my dad," she said quietly. "He says the gnocchi looks terrible, but he loves you anyway," Teresa said as she patted her arm.
The class laughed.
The room's tension turned into something warmer and deeper. The woman chuckled through her tears and nodded. "That sounds like him." Teresa smiled and said, "He wanted to make sure you heard that. You didn't fail him. He's with you even now." The room was silent, but it wasn't awkward. Everyone there realized that something real had just happened. A culinary lesson had morphed into something more, something that helped them. The chef, who was a little confused, laughed and added, "Well, I guess talking to spirits goes well with Italian cooking." "Believe me, this happens more often than you think," Teresa said as she went back to her station. "Now, can someone pass the Parmesan?" The lecture on gnocchi started up again, but the mood in the room was different. It was lighter and more connected. Teresa Caputo can make even flour and dough into doors to the other side. Hello, lovely viewers. Welcome to my channel. I'm Mina, and I hope you're having a great day. If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel.